So as we record, we'll go ahead and turn things over to Lauren and Christine to share with us, sharing with us how to build sustainable and healthier habits for our children. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Christine, just turn your video on. There she is. All right, well, hi, everybody. We are going to allow a couple more minutes for people to trickle in. I know some of us go from meeting to meeting to meeting, so I wanted to take the opportunity to find out a little bit more about your kids, maybe their favorite food or activities that they like or dislike, maybe a fun fact that'll help Christine and I know, who we're talking to and a little bit about you and your family. But to start us off, my name is Lauren Updike. I am the director for the Whole U. I'm going into my 9th year at UW, and it's been an amazing 9 years. My background is actually, I wanted to be a PE teacher and math. I absolutely love working with children. I grew up in a family of teachers and education. But I ended up doing my master's in exercise physiology and learning that there was this something called worksite wellness that complemented the cardiology program that I did. But I want to introduce you to my good friend. So Christina Longi has graciously agreed to join me. As you all know, if you are not a registered dietitian, you cannot legally provide advice or counseling for people that are looking for nutrition advice. And we always have some of our UW dietitians join us and do seminars. But the story behind Christine and I, we're both, so 24 years ago, we met in college. Christine did her master's with me in exercise physiology. She also will go into some of her background. And she was our university's strength and conditioning coach. And fast forward 22 or 24 years later, come to find out during COVID-19, Christine and her family moved to where I live. And my daughter became best friends with this boy Jackson, and he was fantastic. And they've been friends for a year and a half. And as you all know, during COVID-19, we didn't really hang out a lot, nor did you really get to know some of the parents of your children. And long story short, we've been reconnected. We live 10 minutes away from each other. And she was super curious to find out what I did and traveled to UW with me last month and was super inspired. She also works for a company that provides wellness and cardiac rehab services through nutrition and exercise. And so I begged her to join me because, again, I cannot give nutrition advice. And as you all know, as parents, we either have one thing or the other. It's really hard to, it's hard as parents, and it's hard in different stages of your kids' lives. So Christine's going to focus on the nutrition side of things, and then I'm going to focus on the exercise side of things. And I want everyone to know that, we're doing our best to accommodate for all 50 of you. I know that everybody has specific situations. So our tips and our tools and our advice, we'll do our best to make sure that we're accommodating anyone. If we don't answer the questions that you need, feel free to send us an email, and we're happy to spend some time with you or answer your questions directly. So without further ado, Christine, again, thank you so much for joining me on this quest. And all of the chats, I'm loving this. We all come from different, right? I'm the family of athletes, but we love pizza. So we got to help nourish our bodies a little bit more. So, all right.
Well, thank you, Lauren. And again, everybody, it was super fun to reconnect with Lauren, and kind of funny to hear that, like, she sat outside my house and waited to pick up her daughter, but thought it'd be weird if she came to talk to Jackson's mom. But it's been a long time, and it's been a lot of fun, and I loved UW. That was really fun being up there. So I didn't even think to include a picture of my children. I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old boys. My 15-year-old is 6'2", 185, 190. He's into weightlifting. I allowed him to play football this year in 9th grade. He tends to be pretty good. So that's like his main focus now. And then the little one is kind of into everything. He's huge too. He's 5 feet, 105 pounds. He has an 8-pack. He came out of the womb with an 8-pack. I don't know why. He did jujitsu and MMA, dabbled in a little basketball, skateboarding. Now he's doing a little football. He's never played tackle. He likes to ride his bike around the neighborhood. He'll do what he does later, maybe a little track someday. But those are my two little dudes that I try to feed healthy every day. But like Lauren said, it is definitely a challenge. So I'm going to dive right into the nutrition side of things. Again, if you have questions, I'll try to answer the chat as we go along, or Diana will just read them off to me. So I know we all have this experience as a kid. You know, this poor president, his was broccoli. You know, mine was tuna casserole. My mom would feed us tuna casserole. It was disgusting. I haven't eaten it since I left the home. I found another quote today. It said, I breastfed my son and fed him organic homemade baby food as an infant. Fast forward a few years, now as a teen, now he walks in drinking a Mountain Dew and eating Cheetos. And it was like, parenting is humbling. And that's about how it is. You know, my teenager, his favorite food is probably honey buns. Disgusting. My mom wraps up a huge mega box for him under the tree every day for Christmas, or every year for Christmas. The little one actually kind of listens to me a little better. He likes to eat healthy, but I think it's because he likes to keep his abs, which his brother doesn't have. And like Lauren said, so I worked with athletes right out of college, most of my 20s, and now I work with cardiac patients. So I see the full swing of it, kind of these behaviors that we learned and we practiced just because of, you know, all kinds of influences as a child in our younger years, and how that plays out now when you're 40 and 50 and disease starts setting in. And a lot of it can be from the behaviors, from the lifestyle, the lack of activity, the foods we're choosing, you know, smoking, stress levels. That lifestyle really plays a role in, especially cardiac disease is what I specialize in. So I know we've all heard, clean your plate, eat your greens. You know, my boy's dad wants them to have a green vegetable every day. Okay, we'll do a green vegetable every day. No dessert if you don't finish your meal. My crazy sister, she puts the dessert, she puts the chocolate cake in front of her children on the table, and they have to sit there and finish the plate of food that she decided that they needed to eat that night. She's a little authoritarian though, that's her style. A child that states that they're full, but they have to clean their plate, right? Then you ignore your internal cues. I see this a lot with cardiac patients as they get older. So now they finish their plate, even though maybe they're overweight and they are full. And I always say they get the itis, they get too full, like we do on Thanksgiving sometimes. When a child says they're hungry and you're like, no, not now, you have to wait to dinner. Again, that's teaching, I don't get to eat when I'm hungry, when my body tells me it needs fuel. I have to eat when the clock strikes a certain time. Sometimes we all know, and Lauren, I'm going to call on you, you know, if you chronically restrict like the sweets or the, you know, the honey buns and the cookies, like Lauren said, she grew up that way, which the intentions are always pure. So then when she go to her friend's house who had that stuff, she'd pig out and lose her mind. So then that kind of creates a weird association with that kind of food. So like I said, there's different influences on why we eat. There's cultural, there's socioeconomic. If you grew up with food insecurity, I've noticed in some of my patients, or even my mother-in-law, she eats so she doesn't get hungry, because it's just awful if her stomach growls like it did when she was a little kid. Role modeling is a big play in it. You know, I have a friend that corn is the only vegetable she eats. So she's never fed her kids any other kind of vegetables, and didn't introduce them when they were young, when maybe those textures and some of those things are easier to accept when you're younger and growing up than now that they're teenagers and older. Myself being a dietitian, most vegetables aren't my favorite, like broccoli, not my favorite. I ate it, I choked it down in front of my kids. Their favorite vegetables are plain steamed broccoli and cauliflower. So I'm kind of done eating broccoli now because they like it. Lima beans, plain steamed lima beans, they love them. I'm done. So like I said, you know, the intentions are pure, and maybe what our parents did with us and maybe what we're doing with our parents. But, you know, we want our kids to grow healthy. We want the children to have strong, healthy bones and bodies. We want their eyes to be good and to work, and their hair to grow. But, you know, food is expensive and we don't want to waste it. So we must let the little ones lead. So I always talk about a breastfed baby. A breastfed baby eats when it's hungry and stops when it's full, right? And we don't question it. The baby's hungry, we feed it. When it's done, it's done. We don't know if the baby got 2 ounces of milk or if it got 10 ounces of milk. If the baby cries again an hour later, we don't go, oh no, you can't eat. You breastfeed the baby, right? Now, when we switch over to bottle feeding, you know, the baby may be turning its head and milk's pouring out of its mouth, and we're like, just finish this last ounce, right? One, maybe we don't want to waste the formula. right? Because you can't reheat it or give it back to the baby. 2, maybe because they drink this much, they drank the 5 ounces yesterday at 3 o'clock, so they have to have 5 ounces again today because that's what they need, even though the baby is clearly telling you that's enough for today. Or maybe a book told us that's how much they should be eating. But whatever it is, we tend to, when they're breastfed, we let the baby guide us and their body guide us, and those cues, those internal cues that are telling the baby in their body of what they need to grow. And then when they're bottle fed, you know, we tend to override that. And then it carries into clean your plate and on and on. So there's been some studies done. So there was an internal group and an external group. So we were looking at nature versus nurture, right? So paying attention to those internal cues. That was the internal group. They could eat meals, stop when they were hungry, or stop when they were full and eat when they were hungry. The other group had a lot of pressure to clean their plate. So no matter what was on it, they had to clean their plate and eat everything. So the internal group adjusted based on an energy density, or caloric density is what we call it. So if it's a bacon double cheeseburger, that's more calories than, let's say, a salad with a vinaigrette. So maybe they go, I'm full at half of the burger, and they stop. Where maybe they eat a huge salad, maybe it's equal to half the burger in calories, I don't know, but they ate more quantity to get the calories to what they needed so they could say full. Versus the external, when they had the pressure, they ate more calories because of that peer pressure to clean their plate and to eat all of the food, and they didn't pay attention to those internal cues. So here's more examples of some self-regulation, right? Another study, if you watered down the formula, make it like a little leaner, the baby drank more. They drink more ounces to get the more calories. If you make it thicker, you know, more concentrated, more calorically dense, they drink less ounces. Preschool children, if you fed them vegetables versus, let's say, Cheetos, they regulated the volume and the calories according to what they needed. And some of you may remember Olestra. It's off the market now, but it was a fat substitute. So when the children, when they gave them Olestra chips versus like regular chips, they ate more, a larger quantity of the Olestra chips to get the calories for what they needed. So I always say, when I was big and pregnant, I was in the winter of Michigan, the dead of winter. It's cold outside. I had a 5-year-old. I want Oreos, you know, I'm fat and pregnant. So I go and get them. I pull them out. There's one Oreo. Jackson, why did you put these back in the cabinet with one cookie left? And he goes, because I was full. And I'm like, perfect. That's what I want. Your belly is full, but now you have, you know, mad, fat, angry, pregnant mom in the middle of winter. So what does all this mean? So the body is an amazing machine. You know, it knows what it needs and it can self-regulate if we just stay in tune with what it's telling us. We have hunger cues, we have physiological hunger cues, and then of course we have the mental and the emotional kind of hunger cues that we sometimes play into. Calories are energy, they're fuel for our body. They help us, you know, function and do all the things that we love to do, think, dance, play, whatever, what we need and want to do. So if your body needs 2,000 calories a day, it will give you hunger cues when it's running low. I always say kind of when that gas light starts coming on, then you eat a few calories and you'll get it back up to your fullness, to your 2,000 required calories, right? So you can get that full tank in many ways. So if you need, let's say 500 calories a day, or at this moment, this 7 wings and 3 celery sticks would work, right? You're getting about 500 calories. So you should get some fullness cues. Now, if you eat the other one, you're getting about half the calories. So you're going to probably leave a little bit hungry, or you're going to have to eat a little bit more to get what you need. And your body will tell you, it will guide you. The problem is, again, we just override that based on what we've learned or what we, you know, what we practice. And then the picture on the right? So you can choose these high calorie foods. If you need 1,800 calories a day, the burger, shake, and the fries is what you need. And you should be full for the rest of the day. You shouldn't really get hunger cues. Now you may eat because you see or smell dinner being made, you know, or you see a commercial on TV, or somebody walks into the office with something. But physiologically, your body, your tank should be full and have enough energy to get you through the day. Or you can make these other choices that are lower in calories. So their caloric density, their energy density is lower, so you get a bigger volume of food. This is what we teach with the company I do now with cardiac patients. It's all about calorie density. There's no calorie counting, there's no portion control. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, but preferably choose high nutrient fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean meats, and they're low in calories, right? So you can still get a bigger volume, and then you get more fiber and you stay full longer. So, you know, it's all about balance. I know, like, the boy's dad green beans every day, or, you know, green vegetable every day. Really, with children and with ourselves, the recommendations are, you know, 5 fruits and vegetables a day. That's hard to get. I always say you have to be very, very intentional to get 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. You have to be aware. So it's all about balance. If your children don't get, you know, a different color of the fruit every day or a green vegetable every day, it's just over the course of a few days, as long as they get variety. Now, if they go 5 days without any vegetables, we probably want to start filtering some of those in there. So there's a thing called, there's mindful eating and there's intuitive eating. There's appetite awareness. They're all very similar kind of practices. Basically, intuitive eating is just listen to your body. So like, who knows when they're truly hungry, like physically hungry? Like, what is your body telling you? Do you know like what your cues are? For me, my stomach never growls. I get hangry for sure, get a little grouchy with the kids, but I always get a headache. That's always my sign that I'm hungry, is a headache comes on. I'd rather drink a Diet Coke because I always think it's caffeine, but it's usually hunger. I have to think about what I've eaten throughout the day and make sure I get some food or some nourishment. So it's really important to just to know what your cues are. Some people feel lightheaded. Some people may get sleepy. So you just kind of have to know exactly what your cues are, and then what your fullness cues are as well. So there's physical hunger, like I mentioned, and then there's emotional hunger, right? So you really have to pay attention to true physical hunger and try to kind of debunk some of those things we've learned. The clock may strike 6 p.m. If you're not hungry, it's okay to not eat dinner. You know, a lot of times when people ask me for weight loss, well, what time should I not eat past? I shouldn't eat past 7 o'clock, right, Christine? Well, are you hungry past 7 o'clock? You know, it just depends. Like, if you're truly hungry, eat. It may be a glass of milk. It takes the hunger pains away and you go to bed, and that's fine. I tend to not be so hungry. I don't eat dinner a lot of times. I'm just not hungry in the evenings. Now in the morning, it's game on. Like I'm chowing down in lunch, but usually after 3 o'clock, I still sit down with the kids, but I may have a little, I don't know, something, but I'm usually not very hungry in the dinner time. And that's just the way my body works, but I'm a morning person as well. So do you eat because food's there? I always say, you know, when you're in the office, when you're not remote, like we used to be, you eat breakfast, you get in the car, you drive to school, you go in the break, or drive to work, go in the break room, and then there's donuts. What do? You grab a donut, of course, right? But you're not hungry. You just do it because it's there and you saw it. And I just want to challenge you to really think, like, those donuts, like Krispy Kreme is over here on the East Coast, you know, or a Dunkin', they're always there. We can always go to Dunkin' Donuts and get a donut. So it's better to just only eat it when you're truly hungry, if that's truly what you want. There's food associations, right? Date night, dinner and a movie. You go to Outback, you go wherever and eat dinner. You go to the movies, what do? You get popcorn, of course. Are you hungry? Absolutely not. I worked at Michigan State University as their sports dietitian, and I would always go to my friend's house when the games would come on, and I would make buffalo chicken dip, right? Always took buffalo chicken dip. So now my kids, I mean, it could be 10 a.m. and the guys are playing in a tournament, and the boys are like, Mom, where's the buffalo chicken dip? Because it's an association. Michigan State's on the TV, we're having buffalo chicken dip. So you really have to watch some of those kind of associations. I'm working with a client now, and we're trying to get 100 pounds off of him. He's kind of knocking on the door of kind of some heart disease, uncontrolled blood sugars. And he said, well, what do I need to do when I'm stressed out and I go in the kitchen? You know, it could be a bowl of green beans. You know, I can eat that. That'll be fine. And I just said, well, why don't we not eat when we're stressed out and determine another, you know, activity that we could do to relieve that stress? So there's a hunger scale. So you want to pay attention to this hunger scale, right? We go from 1 to 10. You want to hover between kind of 3 and 7, 3 and 8. So, you know, when you get really, really hungry, I was bad about this when I worked in a clinic. I was just stressed. I was just going, and then I'd be famished and my head would hurt. And pizza is always my go-to when I get that hungry. So then I would go and I would eat a whole pizza at lunch. And then what's my afternoon? I'm like, I just want to take a nap. I'm so full because I ate so much because I was in such a deficit. So you don't ever want to get to the 1 to that hungry, right? You will overeat, just like we don't want to shop when we're hungry. I do that. I make bad choices if I'm hungry and I'm in the grocery store. You want to wait until those cues come on, right? You're feeling a little weak. You're feeling, maybe your stomach starts to growl. I kind of feel a headache coming on. Get a little gentle hunger. And I always say, you finish not really comfortably full, but when you're satisfied, you know, like I'm full, that's enough, but I'm not stuffed, you know? So just when you're comfortable and maybe not still a little hungry, but not tipping over into the super full. Okay, you can go to 7 or 8 where you get full and you're like, okay, that's enough, you know, but then we don't want to get to where we're super stuffed. We're till we're uncomfortably full. Okay, I always kind of compare that to you're pumping gas into your tank, the energy, the calories. You would never stand and pump gas into your car and let it just spew out. When you overeat, that's what you're doing. Your body's like, hey, I'm done. The tank is full. The tank is full. And you're still pumping gas. So it's spewing out, right? And what does those extra calories do? They're stored away as fat. Fat is just extra energy. It's being weighted to be used. That stored fat is. So that's kind of your extra gas tank, if you will. This is a common practice, you know, I see all the time in youth sports, especially, but you see it with, you know, adults too. Like, I deserve this chocolate cake. I deserve to eat this today. When I coached my son's t-ball, you know, the moms, the good moms, I guess, if you will, would say, do you want me to do the snack list? And do you want me to, you know, and I just say, I'm kind of the weirdo dietitian. Like, you guys can do whatever you want. You know, they're 4 years old. So games were at 9 a.m. They'd come out there in t-ball, they'd twirl around in the outfield and pick their nose. And then after the game, they would get like cookies and a Gatorade. Well, Gatorade is to replace electrolytes and to kind of nourish you after a long run, after you've been sweating. You know, it's a replacement, if you will, or a supplement to your activity. They haven't even broken a sweat. And then a snack, you know, that was kind of the highlight of the entire game, where I always thought playing the game should be the treat. That should be the fun thing about the morning, not just hurrying up, trying to get it over with so we can get to the cookies. And again, these kids probably woke up, watched some cartoons, ate a bowl of cereal, and then came right to the field. They probably weren't even hungry. So then what happens is now these kids grow, and every time they're active, they think they need a Gatorade. And again, like in the world of sports nutrition, you usually don't even start with Gatorade until you're an hour into activity. And then it has to be hot and humid. And, you know, there's some other factors, but that's the general rule. You usually just stick with water. But now you have kids, anytime they're active, they want to go to a Gatorade, which is just calories that maybe they don't need. So again, it sets up kind of these behaviors that we carry into adulthood. So Ellen Satter is kind of the guru. She's well known for pediatric feeding practices. So her statement is the division of responsibility. So Satter, she found kind of through years of research that parents are responsible for what their children eat, when and where, and then the child is responsible for how much and whether they eat or not. So you let the child stay in tune with when they're hungry, when they're full, but we provide the choices that they get to pick from as the adult or their guardian or their parent. So our job is, you know, preferably like what they eat, like I said, the choices, decide where they eat, preferably to sit down, not eating on the run. You know, maybe it is a mealtime, we sit down as a family, or just kind of not grab and go all the time, because that's kind of can set you up for some bad behaviors as well. Ellen, she recommends putting all the food on the table, even the dessert. So you put everything on the table, and then the child gets to determine what they want and how much they want. So if tonight all they eat is corn and they don't eat any meatloaf or green beans, don't sweat it. Because tomorrow they may eat green beans, or they may like the broccoli, and then they get the protein. Their body knows. If they eat the dessert first, you put a portion of dessert at everybody. If they eat it first, don't sweat it, and then let them choose. So it just, they stay in control, but their body will crave, and they will choose, they should choose what they want. Now, starting this at, you know, 15, mine might pig out on the other stuff at first. It may take some time for them to be in tune. So I do realize that. So the children's, their eating job is they'll eat, right? I was talking to a parent the other day, and she's like, he just doesn't eat much. He just doesn't eat much. The kid is 15. He's 6 feet tall. Clearly he's eating enough. He's growing. I mean, he's tall. He's big. He's going on his trajectory of his growth percentile. So he's fine, even though he's not eating as much as the parents think he should be. And again, it's hard. I know it's hard to let go of that control, but if you just keep them in tune with their little bodies, it will guide them in the right way. They'll know the amount they need to eat. They'll learn to eat the food that you guys eat, and they'll grow as they should into the bodies that they're supposed to. We all know, you know, I don't see it as much in my teenager now because he's just hungry all the time. But, you know, when they were younger, they would eat like crazy for 3 or 4 days, double helpings of everything. And then it would wean off for 3 or 4 days, you know, and then 3 or 4 days. And it's just always, I'm like, you must be in a growth spurt, you know, we call them double-decker peanut butter sandwiches, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch. And then some days it's like, oh, I only ate one of them today because I was full, which is fine. Again, just let them stay in tune and they'll grow fine.
Christine, we have a good question
Yeah.
I thought maybe just so we don't forget about this one, just around growth. So one of the questions is, what about when they're not on their growth trajectory?
Yeah. So then you need some intervention for sure. If they're falling off, and your pediatrician should be able to guide you. But there are some situations, maybe there's some malabsorption, maybe stress, anxiety, maybe it's a control issue and kids pull back and they don't eat. But yeah, if they're, my kids are always 90th and up. If they fall back to 50th, I'm going to be very concerned for sure, because they've always been on that trajectory. So I would definitely discuss that with your pediatrician. You don't want to get behind that, because obviously growth and everything, but then the bone development, especially, is they've got to have nutrients to develop the strong bones. So, and again, that's a great question. I appreciate that. And I'm just making like kind of basic generalizations for, non-Crohn's disease, non-celiac disease kids and adults. So some tips that Ellen kind of recommends is, like I said, the family meals. Now this is hard. I know it's so hard as we get busy, super busy. No eating on the run, right? She says when you sit down at the family table, it doesn't have to be fancy. If we're having turkey sandwiches tonight, put everything out there, let them make their own sandwich, put the fruit, whatever you want, and they can just pick and kind of do their own thing for their own meal. Maybe they don't want bread. Maybe they want it rolled up, the turkey and cheese, that's fine. Let them make their own plate. How do I know today when my 10-year-old comes home, the fourth grader, how much he needs at 6 p.m. on April 25th, 2022? I have no idea what his body needs. So how can I fix his plate and then go, you have to eat all of that today? Because I don't know. I don't know where he is in his metabolism and his growth spurt. I don't even know what he had for lunch, honestly. So we just have to be in tune with that. Once they get to a certain age. I do have a rule though in my house. If you put it on your plate, you have to eat it. You can always go back for seconds. So I always recommend my kids underestimate, just maybe get one scoop, before you go back. They're pretty greedy. They don't want their brother to eat it all. So they end up loading up their plates sometimes, but we're not going to waste food in this house because that's just ridiculous to me. So however you decide, whatever is best for you and your family for that. Sit down snacks. She kind of refers to them as mini meals. They're filling, they're not thrilling, which I really like that. It's not like snack time and it's like Doritos or it's just this amazing honey bun that they love to where they never want to eat the meals because they just want to wait for the next snack because it's so exciting. It's always good to recommend or to provide, if you provide a carbohydrate, like an apple, provide the peanut butter with it, or a yogurt, a protein and a fat that will help satisfy and carry them through. Toaster waffles, like Walmart toaster waffles are a big thing in my house, but they do peanut butter. So it's waffles with peanut butter and syrup. The big one eats 6 every morning and the little one eats 4 every morning. I'm okay with it. I know it's a little bit of sugar, but it's carbs, but at least they get the protein and fat. If they didn't, they'd probably eat the whole box of 10 because it's just carbohydrate. They do that for snacks too, waffles. Don't restrict the forbidden foods. So like I said, it's the dessert with the meal, but maybe you don't offer dessert every night. There's not dessert with every single meal. It's not the treat at the end of the meal once you're already full or you're only eating this food just to get to the treat. It's just a part of the meal, which is such a different way to think. And that's not how I was raised either. Oh, teenagers and screen time and focus on eating. Yeah, mine's been grounded for a month. It was lovely. He didn't have his phone. Now that it's back, yeah. It's just hard and they're grouchy. I threaten I don't threaten him, but I just tell him I give him all these good genes to be a big, strong boy, an athlete and man, and he better not ruin it, kind of a thing. So he better eat and keep up with it. Fortunately for mine with football, they weigh all the time. So we're always trying to gain weight and not lose. But yeah, eliminating distractions while eating, we know this, that's like the #1 weight loss trick too, right? Don't eat in front of the TV because you eat the whole bag or you eat so much more when you're distracted. I'm bad about it. I stand at the counter and I'll be eating lunch because I work from home and I'll be on my phone doing emails or reading something, and then before you know it, it's like, oh my gosh, this food. So yeah, it's definitely hard to work with the teenagers and stuff and just eliminating distractions. And quite honestly, I have slow eaters. He used to be a slow eater and I would get bored at the table. I'd just be like, will you hurry up and finish so we can get up? But I really tried hard to sit down with them. Okay. I'm reading the questions. I'll come back to some of these. So we want children to eat like adults, right? It takes patience to keep offering these foods. So we have a thing in our house called a no thank you bite, especially when they were younger. It was a thing I learned actually from the daycare in Michigan. They have to take one bite. So Ellen Satter, she recommends putting the familiar foods on the table, but incorporating some unfamiliar foods. Start introducing some different things, maybe a hummus, maybe, I don't know, just some green peas, whatever's different. And they have to take one bite, right? They have to take one bite and at least just try it. And we call it a no thank you bite. So what I would hear a lot of times when they were growing up, especially with my oldest, he would say, why did you put this on my plate again? I told you last week I don't like this. And I'd say 20 times, Jackson, you have to try it 20 times before you can decide if you like it or not. And it's the same thing with us, with adults. When I work with cardiac patients, we do cooking demonstrations in our clinics, right? Every week. So there's quinoa, there's hummus, there's edamame, and I was in the deep south of Arkansas. Foods they've never been exposed to, never thought about eating. And some would just look at it and go, no way. And I just say, just spit it out if you don't like it. Like, just try it. Maybe you will like it. What happens if you do like it? Just try it. Just take one bite. But it was really hard, even with adults. So, I mean, it's even harder sometimes with children. But eventually, they may come around to liking it. And like I say, adults, same thing. It takes a few times for you to try something before you can really decide if you truly like it or not.
I really love this one question, Christine, this one question.
Yeah.
And a couple of people are agreeing, and I deal with this too, is, you spend all this time making like this amazing balanced family meal, and then it ends up just kind of being picked around by your children that don't like it. So, and then after an hour, an hour later, your kids are hungry. So do you reserve the same food? Do you let them go in the pantry or in the fridge, or what would you recommend?
I reserve the same food. So if they don't finish their plate, we wrap it up, we put it in the thing. And if they get hungry later, that's what, you don't get to go, oh, I don't like this, and then get chips an hour later, and get in the pantry and stuff. And then too, I get really annoyed when they mess up the kitchen again, even though I don't clean it, the teenager does. But yeah, I would recommend still introducing, because again, as the adult, as the parent, as the guardian, we get to choose what, they get to choose how much and if they eat. So we still get to make the choices for them. The easiest way though, I have found personally, is just don't bring it in the house. Like, just don't even have it in the house. Like Oreos, if I have one Oreo, I'm going to eat the whole pack, So I like soda. That's a treat only if we happen to go out to eat. Honey buns, it's usually only on road trips when we're traveling. Like, those aren't ever in the home until my mom buys them for him for Christmas, but then they're gone, and I just let him eat them. If he eats them all day, the first day, and eats the whole box, whatever, now we're done. I don't have to deal with honey buns anymore. The easiest thing is just make the choices that you want them to have, and then they can decide from there what it's going to be for them. Yeah, that's a hard one. And again, I mean, I've seen it and I know it's so hard, but they may not eat it today, and then next month they may love it, and they may eat it and decide it's the greatest thing ever. My kid decided one day he didn't eat sandwiches anymore. What do you mean you don't eat sandwiches? And he went a few months and he wouldn't eat a sandwich, and then he started eating sandwiches again. So I don't know. Sometimes I think it's just a power struggle. So the easiest way for our children to grow into the bodies that are designed for them, we must provide like the nourishing food, right? Again, we make the choices of what the food items are. They can decide if they want to eat it or not. We all need proper nutrition to grow, to function. We need the vitamins, we need the minerals, we need nourishment and to build immunity. We're done growing, but to build immunity to ward off disease. So the best way to do this is just to eat real food. Eat food in its most natural form. This is what I teach the cardiac patients that have already been stricken with disease, and I always say they've kind of already kissed death. We just get back away from all the processed, the packaged foods, get back to the real thing, eat foods without a food label. That's what I always tell them. If it has a label, walk by it. Don't eat those foods. So when I worked like in Georgia with the cardiac patients, it was common practice down there in that deep South area of the country. They put corn like in the sugar, and they add fatback and bacon to like every single vegetable, which to me, it made all the vegetables taste the exact same. They even like would drown like the broccoli in cheese. So I finally realized you guys don't even know what real vegetables like taste like. Like you don't even know what the broccoli tastes like in its natural form because you're drowning it in the cheese, or they cook it so much in that fat back, which is like bacon fat, if you will, pig fat, pork fat. So I started part of my demonstrations, my cooking demonstrations with the cardiac patients was just plain steamed and raw vegetables, just to introduce them, because carrots, like in their natural form, they're actually sweet, you know, and they didn't know that because they've always put brown sugar and butter on them. So eat real food. It is the easiest way to build healthy humans. So in summary, you know, listen to the children, let them lead. They will not steer you wrong if they can stay in tune with their body. I'm working with another client right now and his kids are overweight. So he had to take out all the sweets and he's like, what about snacks? Well, what about, and it's almost like he feels like he's a mean dad because he's not giving him the sweets and stuff all the time. But what was happening was they've restricted so much. Now his kid is sneaking. He would portion out the snacks when his dad wasn't home. He'd go in there and eat like the rest of the box of the granola bars or whatever, because it's becoming forbidden. You want it to where the cookies are in the cabinet and they stop with one left because they're full and it's not a big deal, where it's just neutral. Role model intuitive eating. You know, eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. We have to be real careful about, oh, I can't eat past 6 o'clock because I'm trying to lose 10 pounds. Just even those little comments, the kids pick up on. You know, I even had to do that with my son. I think I made him a little too neurotic. He wouldn't even eat his birthday cake on his birthday because he didn't want the sugar because he thought it would help him, you know, make him lose his abs or whatever for his competition. So even my intention to teach them healthy ways and healthy practices kind of swung him in the wrong direction to where he couldn't just kind of be a kid, if you will. And then debunk the rules about eating. No carbs, you know, no eating after a certain time. Oh, I don't deserve that. Your stomach should always be growling, you know. And then, like I said, monitor that self-talk in your comments. Even as adults, there's some days I am hungrier than other days. But if you just listen to your body, it will guide you. So we always say concentrate on the feeding and then let the children be in charge of the eating. So here are a few resources where I pulled some of this information from. And then Lauren, are there any other questions or?
Yes, we've got a couple.
Yeah.
So one is I have a 6-year-old who has a few extra pounds on her. She eats healthy, just really likes to eat. One of her friends recently called her fat. How should we handle this, both in terms of responding to the friend, but then also, you know, with our daughter?
Yeah. Do you, you know, one, I would think pay attention if she's overeating or if she's eating for other reasons. You know, if she's on her right growth curve and she's only 6, she's probably going to hit a growth spurt and it'll probably even out. I would be more concerned about the behaviors and the practices. If she's overeating or eating till she's stuffed, or you find her eating all the time, maybe. But if you're providing the nourishing foods, the fruits, the vegetables, those are so low calorie, kind of, I mean, if you overeat on celery, you're going to be fine. If you overeat on carrots or apples, you're going to be fine. For better, you know, choice of words. But yeah, that's unfortunate. And that's what we don't want, is to her start getting made fun of. With that age too, I always recommend you can start making changes. Maybe, you know, you don't do the Alfredo sauces or you don't do those heavy sauces and you just change them, but you don't ever have to say anything, you know, or maybe some of those cookies and stuff aren't out or aren't available every week all the time in the pantry. You only get them once a month. You can do it without saying anything because kids just eat what's there. You know, they'll eat what it's provided. They may ask for it. I one time decided we were going to go vegetarian because I was tired of paying for meat. And we got to day about 9 and my little guy was 6 and he was like, this is good, but could we have some chicken with it? So I was like, oh, I think you realized I cut out the meat. So I didn't say anything. I just did it. You know, his dad was gone. I have to wait till his dad is gone to go vegetarian in the house. Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, so a couple more. I'm curious about the earlier comment, when kids are hungry before dinner time. My 2-year-old would like to eat dinner at 5 p.m., but family isn't home to eat together until 6. So is it more important to feed them dinner when they're hungry, or should we wait till family dinner?
Yeah. So what's recommended, and this is what I did with my kids, and it seemed to be pretty easy, is you start giving them a little bit of dinner. So I would go ahead and steam the green beans and give them to them, or give them some applesauce, which was going to be part of dinner. Just kind of a little bit of dinner to kind of tie them over, and then they can sit down at 6 and probably eat the full meal. I mean, if they want the full meal, that's really hard to have it ready by 5 if the family's going to eat at 6. But yeah, if you could give her just part of it, just a little bit. So it's a snack, but it's actually part of the meal. And because that child is so young, you know, they are going to have a different kind of clock. And then one more thing, maybe if she has an afternoon snack, he or she has an afternoon snack, maybe up the protein and the fat in that, and that might push them closer to 6 o'clock. They'll feel a little more full. Their blood sugar will stay a little more stabilized and get them a little longer. You could try that also.
Great. Well, does anybody have any other questions around nutrition? It's really neat to see, you know, everybody. It looks like we've got some young, looks like we like go-go squeeze. I'm just trying to see if there's any other questions. If I missed your question, I'm so sorry. Any other questions before we jump into exercise? And, you know, obviously nutrition is always super in the forefront as a parent. So I'm glad that we're spending more time talking about nutrition. And honestly, I can do a talk about children exercise anytime. So if we do, I love it. If we go over time, we'll probably do like a take 2 and like focus on the exercise part. So I really appreciate. Okay. So suggest any best ways to get in nuts in the diet?
Well, I mean, you just offer them, you know. I think like cashews are softer than some of the other nuts, you know. Is it a texture thing? Do you need to grind them? Do you need to incorporate them into other foods, like even like a salad or sometimes a grain you can throw some nuts into? Yeah, that's a hard one. Like, I don't really like raw nuts. It's the texture thing is kind of weird to me. So I have to kind of mix mine in and kind of sneak them in a fruit salad. You can throw nuts in a fruit salad, chopped walnuts and pecans. I would try to sneak it in if they really do not enjoy eating them.
And then is it better now to snack too close to dinner if you don't have the meal ready?
Yeah, so that's hard. So what I do for that is I usually just provide a vegetable or a fruit without the protein. So I cut up an apple real fast, or I just give them something without the protein, because that protein and fat, like if I gave them apple and peanut butter, they probably won't eat dinner at all. And then an hour after dinner, they're going to want food, but it's because that their blood sugar is stabilized. So I would just give them like a carb, but it's usually a vegetable. You know, I throw some lettuce and give them my little one like salad. I just give them kind of something simple with milk, maybe even that could add to it.
Great. Any other questions before we? Awesome. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat while I'm sharing about, oh, here we go.
Texture.
Texture.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good question.
That's a hard one. I'm not the expert on that. But I would recommend it's just kind of like a peanut allergy, just kind of reintroducing it to decrease the kind of that resistance or that response. Just kind of the more they get comfortable with it and feeling it in their mouth and slow down, you know, and just keep offering it. But yeah, that's a hard one, super hard one. And hopefully they grow out of it. Some do, some don't. But I do know, I mean, and I'm sure you all have experienced this, if you force them to eat it, they will absolutely resist it for the rest of their life. My sister, if you made her eat something, she would throw it up right there on the table. So she's the stubborn one, you know, so you have to be careful with that. You really have to just offer it and encourage. But if you force it, boy, sometimes they'll turn the exact opposite way for the rest of their eternity.
Right. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thanks. All right. Are you guys ready for, let me share my screen. Let's see here. Wait, what am I doing here? Can you guys see it? Slideshow, play from the start.
We can see it. Yeah, that looks good.
Awesome.
Do you want to spotlight yourself?
Yes.
Where?
Let's see. All right, you guys can see me. Okay, so today for the exercise portion, so goals for today's presentation. So we're going to review the benefits of physical activity. It's a friendly review. We all know why we should be more physically active. I want everybody to really understand the recommendations of physical activity for kids. they're pretty high. And also to bring awareness to how much physical activity your child is getting, but also how much you're getting. Because like Christine said, we are the role models, right? I have some tips for success. And then I also have, an interesting kind of thought around raising athletes versus non-athletes. And then I did some research to find maybe some local resources in your area, and then also making physical activity and that lasting impact. Okay. So benefits of physical activity. Beyond, that physical health, academic performance. So much research has shown that we are more creative and focused when we're active, right? It's really sad for me to see when recess is being taken away, or your recess is used as punishment, right? And if your kids are acting out in schools, they take your recess away, when honestly, maybe that's why the kid really needs was acting out in school, or maybe less focused, is they need that physical activity. So what's been really neat to see too is that some schools and some teachers are incorporating a little physical activity or some meditation or yoga within that class structure. Also, brain and emotional health, right? So we are happier when we exercise. There has been so much research around anxiety and depression, and whether your child has been diagnosed with that or not. We've had a really hard couple of years, and they're really showing that kids are struggling. And whether they were diagnosed with any sort of anxiety or depression, they are feeling some of it from the pandemic. And so if we can really encourage and get not only our kids, but ourselves as a family out there and moving a little bit more, it will improve our emotional health. And you all know that the more we exercise, or the more that we're physically active, it helps with that kind of that chronic or acute stress throughout the day. And then the physical side of benefits of physical activity. Oops. Sorry about that. Who's calling me? No. Muscular fitness, heart and lung health, cardiometabolic health, right? It keeps our blood sugar levels down, long-term health, and doing all the research and thinking about, again, I am not a child development expert, but I was, I am an exercise physiologist, and I do have my master's in exercise physiology. And in all the research the last month that I've been doing on this presentation is, we do have to start those healthy behaviors pretty early. So if you have a 19-year-old and you're like, oh my gosh, it's okay, right? It's never too late to incorporate a healthier lifestyle or have a nutrition and physical activity lifestyle. But for those of you with the 3-year-olds and the 6-year-olds and the 10-year-olds, if you can make this a part of their lifestyle, that long-term health is super, super important. And then, like Christine said, bone strength, right? So the more we exercise, we're actually stressing our bones. And when you stress those bones in a good way, they build. CDC recommendations for children. So obviously ages 3 to 5, it's recommended that we're physically active throughout the day, just for your growth and development. We should be active when we're playing with our young kids, right? Like your play dates, or maybe at a playground, or you do your best to go outside more often and do things with your kids. But then as they get older, it is recommended that your children are physically active for 60 minutes or more of moderate to vigorous, intense physical activity each day. I wanted to challenge the group. Is anybody willing to share in the chat how much physical activity you think your kids are getting? Some of you mentioned in the chat that your kids are athletes, right? So not that it's easier, but if your kids, I was thinking about this presentation, and I'll be honest, my kids have always done recreation sports and have moved into, a higher level of sport. And so they are active for that scheduled time. So anybody willing to share how much physical activity your kids are getting, or maybe just take 30 seconds to think about, I mean, I love this picture, right? Like raise your hand if your kid has a screen, right? We're in a different world than our generation of parents. When we were younger, if you're bored, you know, our parents kicked us out of the house and we went and played in the neighborhood. Where now kids, you know, who do have more time on their hands, they tend to go to their video games or their device or that social aspect. And then before we talk about tips, you know, think about how much physical activity are you getting, right? So are you someone that is the role model of working on your health and fitness, or that, you know, finds your window of opportunity, or that encourages, you know, a family walk? Or are you personally training for a 5K, or do you go to the gym, or do you play an adult sport, or are you someone who loves to hike, right? How much physical activity that you're getting actually can really impact how much physical activity that your kids are getting, or that your kids strive to get. So this was really interesting research, you know, around kind of being that example, right? Role modeling that physical activity. So a child's level of physical activity will rise by 5 to 10 minutes for every 20 minutes that the parent is physically active. So when they're seeing that you're more physically active, they tend to also increase their physical activity. So, you know, if you're someone that you like to be out in your yard and gardening or mowing the grass, right? Your kids are going to come out and want to hang out and play with you. Maybe that's something that you can put them to work, right? No matter how old they are. It doesn't have to be a skilled sport. It can be movement. Or if you're, you know, the person in the household that is cleaning the house, right? You know, assign your kids chores, assign your kids to be part of the team and clean the house and make them move and make them go up and down the stairs and use that vacuum. You know, there's so many different forms of physical activity. And then kind of the downside is for every hour that a parent has spent inactive, there actually was an 8 to 15 minute increase in sedentary time for your kid. So, you know, that also shows that the more sedentary we are, the more we're on our phones, our kids are on our phones, or the more that we're watching TV, your kids are watching TV. So again, you know, there's no judgment in this group. It's just a fact, right? So just be more mindful of, you know, when you're making those points of just decisions of, you know, let's put the TV on versus maybe let's go for a walk, or even just go outside and throw a ball around, or you know, playing, depending on how old your kids are, you know, you can always play a good round of tag. Will get your heart rate going. And then really the only correlation, if you are a sedentary parent, but your kids play organized sports, they're clearly getting the recommended amount of activity. So some tips for physical activity, right? It's always, you know, the exercise part, it's always something where we all know what to do, right? But it's really finding the time and making it part of our lifestyle. So, you know, some of the tips I have, which again, we can really find them anywhere, but it's always great to have a good reminder, is when you're setting, if you have the young kids and you're setting the play dates. So maybe instead of, you know, having your play date of they come over for a meal, or you meet at a restaurant, right? Or if it's surrounded by something that's not active, try to shift those, right? So maybe every other play date, you meet at a playground, right? Or you like meet at a jump zone, or maybe one of the beaches when the weather is nice. Like today, I hear it's beautiful in Seattle. Or maybe you meet at a park. Gosh, there's so many amazing parks in Seattle that you can meet with your friends and their kids and do something more around physical activity. Also, family time. Gosh, you know, it's crazy during the pandemic, right? We got a lot of family time. And I loved hearing how people really felt like they reconnected because they weren't so hustle, bustle, go. They had a little bit more time because other things were canceled, that they'd spend more time with their family on outdoor walks or hikes, you know, parks. There's beautiful lakes where you guys all live. So there's ways to incorporate family time with movement. And again, it doesn't have to be every weekend, but we do need to be a little bit intentional and plan that out. Also, encourage the stairs, right? Are you someone that when you're visiting people in an apartment and buildings, the doctor's office, when you go to hotels, when you're on trips or maybe other appointments, right? Are you the person that goes to the elevator with your kids? Or are you the mom or dad or the caregiver that's like taking the stairs, right? Of course, I'm the one taking the stairs. So just little tiny things like that, right? That little activity, all those little bouts of activity, they add up during the day, and they also develop some really good habits for your kids if they're able to take the stairs. Encourage neighborhood play and backyard play. And again, I'm fully aware it's not always the safest thing, right? Like I was the mom and where I live, I allowed my kids to walk to school, or my son used to bike to school in 5th grade. And I'd always get the text from people like, oh my gosh, your son's biking to school. Because we're the generation of parents that, depending on where you live, maybe you don't feel safe that your kids are running out into the neighborhood, or, maybe you're the working parent that has to leave before your kids go to school, or it's not feasible for your kids to walk to school. But if you are in that position where your kids can do more backyard play and neighborhood play, it's important to be encouraging of that. And again, or even if you can get like a basketball hoop, right? Playing basketball does not mean your kid needs to go to the NBA, right? It's just another form of physical activity, right? Like so many kids can bounce that basketball and shoot the hoop. And it's always fun to add a parent or a sibling. You can make a fun family game out of it. And like I said before, active chores, yard work, house cleaning. Another one that I like to do when we're cooking or when we're just kind of hanging out outside, play some music, right? Bring some joy, have them dance, or show them their the most recent TikTok dance, or whatever, however old your kids are. Dance, dance, dance. Again, that's just another form of physical activity, and also brings joy and a lot of laughter. And then my last one is just have equipment available, right? I think our generation of parenting, especially in the youth sports, it's like we always are making things about skill, right? So if you have a basketball or a volleyball or a badminton set or ping pong, it's not about always showing your kid how to do it so perfect. Let them figure it out, right? The ultimate goal is for your child to move and learn to really enjoy something. And if they ask you, hey, can you show me how? Right? That's kind of a better approach as a parent, instead of saying, oh, you're not shooting it correctly. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, does it really matter if they're not asking, right? Like I said before, if they're not playing basketball and wanting to, go to college playing basketball or being an MBA, it doesn't mean you can't have a basketball hoop in your backyard. So that's something that my son likes to do when he gets home from school. It's like, Mom, play basketball. And again, being honest, I don't always want to play basketball, but being mindful of how much time is it going to take me to add 10 minutes to my son's life to shoot some hoops with him, right? So again, kind of that child-led activity really can impact the behavior later. Teenagers. Okay, so what do we do if our teenagers, number one, aren't athletes, or number two, they decide not to really play their sport anymore, right? So you have, with your younger kids, you can make those family walks and the hikes and the fun activities outside. Again, if you have to go, we'll do a part 2. I know some of you have to go to another meeting, so it's totally fine. I just have a couple more slides. So what can we do, right? So how can we take movement to another level that maybe can resonate a little bit more with a teenager? So one of the things you can do is encourage activities with impact, right? So, hey, let's do the color run that benefits, this charitable organization, or pick, a lot of teenagers are super passionate around different movements, which I think is amazing in that generation. Research it for them. Try to find like a cool activity or a walk or maybe jump rope for heart that has that impact, so they can kind of connect a little bit further. And then you can find training plans, right? Like, okay, this is going to require us to, to walk together, or even walk on your own 3 days a week, or run or train for it. So again, finding causes that they're passionate about will make them definitely connect a little bit more. Also, with teenagers, they love challenges, right? So like come up with challenges or have your teenager come up with a fun challenge, right? So like mom versus daughter, mom versus, teenager or whatever, have some sort of like days in a row of physical activity and do it with them. Find a cool app. There's so many amazing apps. YouTube, you can YouTube. There's fun TikTok exercise challenges, encourage your child or your teenager to really drive that competition and then support them by following along. And then, I wanted to bring this up because raising athletes, youth sports now versus youth sports then, it's a big difference, right? And anybody out there that has kids in high level sports, they become these all year round sports. So if your child is into football, they play football all year round and their football consumes their life, that there's no other lifetime sport. So as a parent, it's your responsibility to encourage other lifetime sports, meaning, hey, let's go to at the park, they have, pickleball or tennis, or, let's train for a fun 5K that's benefiting a cause, or, just hiking. Like, yes, force your kid to do something extra. And that's different than their, sport. Or if your child, is a football player, but it's like, mom, I kind of want to do like, rec basketball. Yeah, do a complementary sport if you can fit it in, or if you can maybe commit, to that one main sport, but then the others that you're doing it, when you can, and be okay with it, right? The other thing is encouraging rest, right? Our kids that are these high level athletes, they don't rest. So encourage them to rest and repair when they really need to. So when your kid is bored and wanting to be on their phone or maybe playing video games the full day on Sunday, well, they're active Monday through Saturday, right? Their body. I remember, being a high level athlete, and I remember Saturday, I would just lay down and watch like marathon, cartoons or a show that I loved for hours and hours and hours. That's okay to be lazy and rest. And also as parents with athletes, like be patient with their progression, right? Everyone progresses differently as an athlete. So the athlete that your child is at 6 is going to be a different athlete at 10, a different athlete at 12, a different athlete at 14, even at 17. So be patient with that progression. Don't get caught up into the world of athletics where you've got, a ton of other supplemental training or additional coaching, or, maybe you have like soccer 4 days a week, but then this other program has soccer on the other days. And so you're doing all those things. I'm not saying don't do it, but just be careful and be mindful. If your child or your athlete needs a little bit of a break, be supportive of that, because again, the athlete that they are at 12 is going to be different at 16, right? So we got to let them grow, and then kind of listen, just like food, listen to their body when they need rest and repair. And then I'll send this out, but these are some really cool resources in Seattle. You guys have so many like amazing parks. There's some pretty cool programs that you can, obviously pay for. And in doing this, I will be transparent. I'm like, oh, the Whole U, we need to find discounts. So one of the things that the Whole U does is we have a discount network. And so we'll probably spend the next month looking at a ton of resources for kids, fitness or physical activity, little kid gyms, and also like athletic coaching for teens. There's a lot of really cool things happening in Seattle. So we'll do our best to try to get our discounts and get them up on our discount page. But also like active.com is a great resource for a ton of like local 5Ks. There's also the Seattle Marathon Summer 5K for kids, which looked pretty cool. And then King County, obviously they have the park finder, right? Like how fun would it be as a family to pick a different park? Maybe it's every month, like once a month, you find a different trail. And then the Whole U has a great resource, a great article on the top hikes in Washington. So, again, here, I'll stop sharing. For me to recap, right? To recap, exercise is, we need to be role models. right? And again, you don't need to be training for a marathon to ensure you're being a role model, right? But if you're finding those windows and you're making those points of decision to be more active, right? We're not always finding the closest parking spot at the mall or at the grocery store. You know, be that parent that's like, we're walking, right? We're going to park at the furthest and we're going to walk. We're going to get the wiggles out. And just remember, like, activity helps your kids focus. It makes them happier. And, you know, obviously, it definitely creates these really long lasting habits for when they go into their adulthood and when they're not under your roof. So any questions for me? Again, apologize for going over. Happy to do a part 2. We're happy to maybe do, like, you know, a program for kids 10 and under, and then maybe a teen. Got any questions? Let me see in the chat here. You know. Yes. So yeah. So when your kids are, let's see if this is what's appealing. Yeah, like when your child is young, right? Like, make it fun, like tag or hide and seek, right? Happy season. Yeah. So now that it is nicer, definitely the weather plays a huge role. I realize the weather. Yeah, like when you're, you know, when there's recess, that's great movement for your kids. And also, if your kid does do an activity, an extracurricular activity, that also helps them get their exercise in. Yeah, we'd be happy. Awesome. We'd be happy, Jared, to do a part 2. Yes, Barbara, absolutely, for sure. For sure. I think it's coming up with really understanding, you know, obviously understanding your kids and where they're at. And, you know, every child's different, right? Like in just thinking about this presentation, you know, I had to really think hard about if the parent isn't physically active, right? So we've got to work on the parent incorporating physical activity, whatever it means for them. But you also have to think about if your child does you know, either have a disability, or if your child is not even interested in exercise or not even interested in a sport, right? How can we come up with creative ways for movement? And like I said before, there's a lot of ways to move that isn't running or playing basketball. You know, it could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be you know, Christine, you can jump in here too. It could be just playing games, right? It could be what else could we do? It could be sitting down or playing duck, duck, goose. It could be sitting down and throwing a ball. It could be, you know, outside playing badminton, ping pong. But yeah, it definitely, you know, depending on your situation and depending on your kids and depending on your ages, like I said, I would be happy to, you know, feel free to shoot us an email or shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to talk with you maybe about your specific situation with your child. And, you know, maybe we can come up with some sort of routine or finding the joy to keep your kid consistent with it and make it part of their lifestyle, whatever that may be. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for sticking around later. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, Christine, so much.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I love all the questions. I love questions. I love, you know, it's understanding our community, right? And what you guys are really looking for. So awesome. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day. And I'm sure we'll see you guys on more Zooms to come. See you. Thank you. Bye.
Lauren, Christine, bye.
Bye.